Okay, so here's the thing. Wall Street got on Bitcoin because as of now, US investors are able to buy shares into a spot Bitcoin ETF. Wall Street giants just as BlackRock, Fidelity, WisdomTree, VanEck, who by the way have an amazing ticker with HODL, are now offering spot Bitcoin ETFs to their clients, and from today on, I guess their salesmen will be hard at work. First off, what is actually an ETF? I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole and explain everything to you. We do have a blog article explaining the matter in detail, which we will link below. But simply put, an ETF is an exchange traded fund, meaning it represents a asset or underlying assets in that fund, and just as a stock, you can basically buy shares into these funds. They're also being traded on exchanges, and you can exchange them, trade them multiple times a day. Different than other funds or maybe even index funds, which only allow to do this once a day. And the idea behind ETFs is it's an easy way for you to invest. You don't have to stock pick, you don't have to cherry pick your field or your market. You can just go with something, know that it sticks because it has that vast basket or maybe even one asset, and you're good to go with it. And for the spot Bitcoin ETF, investors, mainly, institutional investors and long-time ETF investors, will now have a regulated financial tool to invest, let's say, into Bitcoin, because why they're not investing into Bitcoin directly, we'll get down in a later matter of the video. But at first, you can say, okay, that spot Bitcoin ETF, it tracks the spot price of Bitcoin itself. So these investors will be able to profit from the volatility that Bitcoin offers, for example. We all know a halving is coming up this year. So it's also a great time for these ETF investors to get in. And they're mainly interested, obviously, in price and in number go up, because otherwise they probably wouldn't invest into Bitcoin at this point if it wouldn't have been through an ETF mechanism. However, this also comes with a bit of a downturn, because if you think about it, yes, of course, it tracks the underlying asset, in this case Bitcoin, but at the end of the day, this is only the price. And most of these ETFs, by the way, I think even all of the ETFs, they do have a cash only model, meaning it's cash in, cash out. So an investor, he pays cash into the fund, he then gets a redeem for that fund, that is something like a shared certificate, and with that certificate he can claim, hey, I bought Bitcoin at that price. He can obviously then speculate on the price, and if he or she feels comfortable to sell, they can then do that and profit from that sell by taking out cash again. So they're never gonna put in Bitcoin and redeem Bitcoin. It's always gonna be cash and fiat rail. This comes with a huge downturn, because at the end of the day, you are actually not investing into Bitcoin. You are investing into the issuer who is claiming to hold these Bitcoins. Obviously, we're all under the impression that they do, and that they back these funds with the most Bitcoin-esque things as possible, because technically they could also back it with some mining stocks. But then at the end of the day, they do want to facilitate the process. They want to actually show the spot Bitcoin price and allow their investors to invest into these things. And as you may have noticed, that ETF race is really a race to the bottom and a real drag race between a lot of different ETF issuers, because we have the following issuers, and let me quickly glance over to my notes. We have Fidelity, BlackRock, Grayscale, who will turn their trust into an ETF after all, ARK with 21 shares, who partnered up to offer their ETFs, Franklin Templeton, who by the way have an amazing profile picture with laser eyes now, Bitwise, Invesco, who is partnering up with Galaxy Digital, we have Valkyrie, we have VanEck, as I already said, with their amazing HODL ticker, and last but not least, we have WisdomTree. And it's amazing to see such a high interest in Bitcoin by Wall Street, obviously, but if you actually take a closer look, you'll start to realize, oh, it really is a drag race, not really for the competition, because none of us plebs are going to offer a spot Bitcoin ETF at the end of the day. We would just lose out by the amount of money these guys can raise. No, it's actually a drag race in regards to fees. Because in the days leading up to the approval, you did see a lot of these issuers stating that they will start with something like 0.3% in fees, then suddenly it dropped to 0.25. Now some of them even have 0.21% of fees or 0.20 fees. So it really has been the last couple of days a degradation of these fees. inevitably, the people who will offer the least fees are probably the ones who are going to win. So it'll be interesting to see if this degradation of these fees and the ones who basically offer the lowest one will also be the one last standing, if the other ones will still compete, if there will be like special spot Bitcoin ETFs for special markets, etc., etc. Okay, but here's the thing. Why do we even talk about these ETFs? What is so interesting about them? Well, it's not really that, now you can buy spot Bitcoin ETFs. I mean, it's been a goal from like the Winklevoss twins for 10 years now. No, the actual interesting thing is that for the first time now, Wall Street is finally accepting Bitcoin as a viable asset. I'm not saying or stating that they accept it fully. You still have your Jamie Dimons and stuff in the world who claim that Bitcoin is money for criminals, but then he's sort of partnering up to actually be investing into these funds. No, the real story is that for the first time ever, we now see Wall Street taking Bitcoin serious, and that they will actually offer some shape or form of Bitcoin to their clients. We have to say they're also a bit hindered by regulation. So it is a bit tricky if you are actually one of these financial institutions and you want to offer, for example, self-custody solutions. You can do it. It's just a lot more harder to get there than compared to an ETF, which is something all of these institutions are already familiar with. But the biggest thing is, the biggest asset manager in the world, that is BlackRock, by the way, do invest into Bitcoin after having a completely different stance 6-7 years ago, when Larry Fink used to call it money for criminals. Now he's calling it a flight to safety, and he's really showing that evolution probably most of us have also had in the Bitcoin ecosystem, where we discover Bitcoin for the first time, we think it's too good to be true, we invest some time into it and realize, oh, there is actually more to this story. And the same thing now applies for these Wall Street giants, and from looking at what's going on and how they interacted, it's clear and evident that they also want to push into this future and potentially have a step into a different financial system than the one they've usually been used to. This will also be positive for us Bitcoin hodlers, because we don't have to invest into these spot Bitcoin ETFs. We are in Europe with Relai. I mean, we can't even invest into them because they're US only. We would have different products over here to invest into, which are similar to these spot Bitcoin ETFs. But it's good for the overall ecosystem because it will have a capital inflow with a lot of money coming in. These institutions, they have significantly more liquid money that they can shove around, that they can put into these trusts if the demand is there. And from past experiences and past interviews we've seen with all of these CEOs of these institutions, their client base is really interested in a spot Bitcoin ETF, meaning if they actually offer this and their clients come in, you will see an increase in market cap potentially in Bitcoin, because after all, why shouldn't these issuers buy Bitcoin to keep it on the balance sheet to actually exchange the stuff they're offering in the fund? So if they buy, let's say, 1,000 Bitcoin and they're offered in their funds and they track the spot price, why shouldn't they buy it? I mean, okay, they can do a mix with other things in the Bitcoin ecosystems, but they really have to buy the underlying asset for it to be proper. And at the other day, that's just on the one end, the guys who are buying. On the other end, you also have the huge money influx of investors, ETF investors, who have significantly been conservative over the past compared to other industries, but they now see this spot Bitcoin ETF as a solution because, their renowned issuer of ETFs is now offering it. If you combine all of that together, and you see how much money is coming in, how the market cap will grow, inevitably, if the steady inflows keep coming in, also how the price will grow with the spot Bitcoin ETFs and the price itself of Bitcoin. Combine that with the halving, combine that with the limited supply, and you really do get that supply shock. You do get that effect that that number inevitably will go up, and that we will see a future where the most scarce asset in the world will even become more scarce. Now, for people who really hold Bitcoin, is this big news? Obviously not. You can still hold your own Bitcoin. By the way, you don't have to pay 0.25 or 0.2% fee to any of these issuers if you buy Bitcoin. You just pay the transaction costs, but that's all part of the network, and we're happy to pay for it because it keeps the motor running, and we redeem the miners this way. And you can go your happy days. You can still stack sats, but it is obviously big news for ETF investors who so far didn't want to touch Bitcoin because it seemed risky. Now they do have a known vehicle, a known tool that that they've already used to invest into it. So these Spot Bitcoin ETFs, they can really be a bridge between that old traditional finance system, after all it's still ETFs, and the Bitcoin world, because we've all been there. You just need that first push to discover Bitcoin. You need that first direction into where you need to head. And once you actually start getting familiar with it, you can then start onboarding more people. And I can actually see a future where, at the next Christmas dinner table, instead of being asked like, how is your magic internet money going? This time around, your aunt, your uncle, maybe even your parents will go, hey, we actually bought shares into the Spot Bitcoin ETF. What do you think? You will have a different situation there where you can sit down, you can explain to them that this is actually a good thing. Now you invested into the first step into the Bitcoin ecosystem. But there's actually a difference between like paper Bitcoin, which is what Spot Bitcoin ETFs are, the real Bitcoin, how to hold it on your hardware wallet, and all of these things. It makes our conversations easier and it gets people talking about Bitcoin. And this is, after all, we think the biggest effect out of these Spot Bitcoin ETFs. Long gone are the days where we will have a huge amount of negative press. Bear in mind, there will still be some. You can never get rid of everything. But you will have a different conversations. And people who so far have been skeptical will open their eyes, will listen to you, and will be gladly talking about you if there is any changes coming to the Bitcoin ecosystem, or if there's maybe even a new offering. And who knows, maybe some of them will go, I've invested into the spot price. What if I invest into the real asset? Just as it happened with gold, you may start out with the ETF, but then at the end of the day, you start buying the real asset. And we all know the best and scarce asset is Bitcoin. So if you haven't stacked yet, you still got time to stack. Don't bother about the Spot Bitcoin ETFs. From now on, Wall Street is on board, and we can safely say that we welcome them, and we hope that they also will have a fun ride.